on how/why I slept 3 feet away from my dead neighbor for 6 to 8 weeks during quarantine. Just giving a trigger warning, this story is kind of gross. It was May of 2020 and the pandemic was definitely hitting a peak. Everyone had been at home at this point for the past 2 months and everyone was kind of going crazy, including myself. I lived alone at the time in a 250 square foot studio apartment that was very small in Los Angeles in the Valley. To give perspective for the rest of the story, my building is kind of like an old motel style, so all of our doors open outside, and the building is a rectangle with my door being the only one on the end of the rectangle and 2 doors on either side of me. It was around the middle of May and I started to call my mom and tell her that I wasn't really feeling like myself. And what I meant by that was that I was having headaches, I wasn't really sleeping through the night, I was feeling nauseous a lot, and honestly, we all kind of wrote it off as me just feeling a little lonely and going a little crazy during quarantine, just like everyone else was. It was really unlike me to not be able to sleep through the night, so I thought this was really strange, but again, I just kind of wrote it off because I just thought I was really sad and depressed. Throughout the month of May, I noticed that I had an uptick in the amount of bugs in my apartment, which was very unusual because I'm extremely tidy and there's never bugs, but I noticed there was a couple spiders here or there throughout the month, but again, I didn't really think much of it because it was really hot, it was the middle of summer, and sometimes this happens. I started complaining to my manager that I was really sick of the spiders and I needed her to come, but she said she didn't really want to send anyone because it was the pandemic and it wasn't an emergency and it wasn't like I had a million of them, it was only 2 or 3. Towards the middle of May, I started to complain about a bad smell that I would get whenever there was a heavy breeze, but again, it wasn't anything I could really put my finger on, it was just something that I was smelling occasionally. Truthfully, my best description of this smell was kind of like a dead fish, so I thought that maybe a bird had caught a fish, which in retrospect is the most stupid thing ever because there's no lakes anywhere near me. I started to feel really crazy because again, I wasn't sleeping, the smell was really starting to bother me, and this was going on for weeks, but my manager was refusing to send anyone out or come out herself because of the pandemic. I started thinking maybe my schizophrenic neighbor who lived to the right of me had his dog had died or something had happened and I got really worried. But my manager told me she can't just start knocking on neighbors' doors and bothering them, but I had this really bad feeling that something was super wrong and the smell was getting really bad every time it was windy and I was really, really worried. But remember, it's the middle of the pandemic and we had been home 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, so I think I had gotten kind of used to the smell. I called over my boyfriend, he came, and I was super nervous to have him over because of obviously COVID, but he agreed the smell was horrific. He could barely handle it. And then after staying with me for a week, he started to not be able to sleep through the night, he was feeling nauseous and all the same symptoms as me. This is when I started to think something's really wrong. Because my manager said she wouldn't come out, I decided to tell her I was going to call police non-emergency, so they came out and did a wellness check on the neighbor that lived to the right of me who was schizophrenic. Turns out he was perfectly fine and everything was okay. My manager was pretty upset with me because I was disturbing my neighbors, and then they gave me a notice saying that I can't be harassing people in the building. I consulted the police and they told me after 48 hours if my manager didn't convene, then I could call them again. And this is when things got crazy. I felt like I was on a mission because no one was listening to me and my manager was making me out to feel crazy.
Like for part 2.